Hello, and welcome to Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today's video is part of a series I do where I compare books with their movie adaptation. And before we get into the book and movie, I want to warn you that there will be spoilers for both the book and the movie, so if you plan on reading the book or watching the movie, you should do that first, and then come back and watch this video. I also want to tell you that this is available as a podcast. I will link to Spotify and Apple down below because those are the two most popular platforms, but I am on other platforms as well. So these tend to be about 30 minutes, but especially if they're longer and it works better for you to listen to it, that is available. And I also want to say that even though my podcast is called Why the Book Wins, I do love movies as well, and there are times where the movie wins when comparing book versus movie. So it is not always the book, because I do love movies, and oftentimes, before I even started this podcast, the reason I would read a book was because I liked the movie, and so I wanted to read the book for it. And so I love both, essentially, and I think I give a fair view of both book and movie, despite my name being Why the Book Wins. Anyway, thank you for clicking on this video. I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, let's get right into the book versus movie. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me here today at Why the Book Wins. Today's episode is a special one. It is The Phantom of the Opera. The book is written by Gaston Leroux and was published in 1909. And then I will be talking about two movie adaptations. So I will talk about the 1925 silent film directed by Rupert Julian, as well as the 2004 movie adaptation of the Broadway musical directed by Joel Schumacher, and the Broadway musical was written by Andrew Lloyd Weber and was written in 1986. And I did choose this one because I made a video asking you guys to choose of a list of 20 options which book versus movie I should cover, and then whichever one was most talked about is the one I chose, and Phantom of the Opera was the one that was mentioned the most often, so that is why I covered it. So head over to that video if you want to see the books and movies I listed, and if you want to comment which ones from there you would like to hear me talk about. The Beguiled was also a popular one, so I will be covering that one too. So that'll be like in a month, I would say, is when I'll be covering The Beguiled. Anyway, to talk about The Phantom of the Opera. So I didn't even find out until recently that this was based on a book. I grew up listening to the musical, and I saw the 2004 movie shortly after it came out, but I knew there were movie adaptations that were older, but I did not realize that it was a book. And I also went into the book never having seen those other movie adaptations, so I really only had the musical in my mind. And so reading the book, I was surprised just at how dark it was and how disturbed the Phantom was in the book. And the book is written from the perspective of an investigator or a journalist who is trying to uncover the mysteries of what happened at the Paris Opera House like a few years prior. And when I first started the book, I thought that this was like a completely true story and that the author really was like a journalist, which Gaston Leroux, I think he was a journalist, but I thought it was all true. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe this is a true story. But turns out the book is a novel, and while the tragedy of the chandelier falling causing the deaths of some people, as well as like rumors of a ghost, and then you do have the Paris Opera House underneath, there are all these like mysterious tunnels, and there's a river underneath the Opera House, and so it's based in some truth, but the story of the Phantom and his backstory and Christine and Raoul, all of them are fictional people. And this was a quick read. It was originally published as a serial, and so because of that, like so many chapters end as a cliffhanger, and so it's one you're able to get through pretty quickly. I was invested in the story and I was wanting to know what would happen. And also, this is published in 1909, and I often assume that older books will take some time to get used to the way it's written because, they had a different way of talking back then. But this one, it's written in a very straightforward way, and so there isn't really much of a learning curve as far as the writing style. You're able to just dive right in and enjoy the book. And so I am talking about two different movie adaptations, but I will start with the 2004 movie first, and then I'll move on to the 1925 movie. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I will have it broken up into chapters down below if you want to hear me talk about just a specific event or person or something. But so the movie review for the 2004 movie, like I said, I grew up listening to the musical, like the Broadway soundtrack. And then I saw this movie it wasn't right away. It was like a few years after this came out. I finally saw the movie. And yeah, the music is incredible. And this is a great movie adaptation. We do have Gerard Butler who plays the Phantom, and he doesn't have the greatest voice out there. However, he is not the disaster that Russell Crowe was in Les Mis, so at least he's better than that. And everybody else, like Emmy Rossum as Christine, she is incredible. Her voice is amazing. She looks like how you imagine Christine to be. And she was only 17 when she filmed this, which again, in the book, Christine is really young. I think she is like 17 or 18. And then Patrick Wilson as Raoul, again, he was perfect. And he's sang on Broadway before. And the only person who didn't do their singing is Minnie Driver. And she is a singer. She does have a good voice, but she doesn't have the operatic voice. And so they did dub over her singing. And I will say Carlotta, Minnie Driver plays Carlotta, and Carlotta does have a bigger role in the movie. And a lot of scenes with her, like, I forgot how comedic this movie was, basically, especially the stuff with Carlotta, and just Minnie Driver, it seems, was just having a lot of fun with this role, so that was good to see. And there was one thing, I don't think I had noticed this before, but in the Point of No Return scene, when they're doing Don Juan Triumphant, at the end, when like Don Juan shows up, Minnie Driver, at that point, Carlotta is just part of the ensemble. And so as the ensemble, they all like point to where the Phantom is or whatever. And Minnie Driver is like purposefully pointing in the wrong direction, and then like someone else is trying to get her to point in the right direction, and I just thought that was really funny. But yeah, this movie is just an amazing production. The costumes, the sets, the singing. Like, my only complaint for this movie would be the flash forwards, because we start in the present day and then we go back in time to when, you know, Christine was around and all that stuff. And throughout the movie, there's like 3 or 4 different flash forwards again back to the present. And I'm fine with the movie beginning and ending in the present day, but all the constant like flash forwarding throughout the movie, like every time that happened, it just took me out of the moment. And I don't understand the point. I understand the point of the beginning and the end, but all the scenes in the middle, take those out, because they just ruined the flow of the movie, in my opinion. And so I'm going to start with the Phantom. So in the book, we get a lot of background on the Phantom's history. For starters, we find out that his name is Eric, which is just such a normal name. So when that is revealed that his name is Eric, I don't know, it just seems funny, right? Like, the Phantom of the Opera is just some guy named Eric. We learn that he was born disfigured and that his mother was just like so disgusted by him that she made him a mask, and that she just never kissed him. She never wanted him to kiss her. And so it was just a very sad childhood that he had. And he did go in the circus at one point, I believe. And then from there, he just travels a lot as he gets older. And he travels to like the Middle East, like specifically Persia is mentioned. And he is very smart, and he will help the sultans build these like trap doors and these torture chambers and just, you know, different things like that. However, after he's done helping them, he has to like escape in the night and run away, because the sultans, because he knows their secrets, they now want to have him killed. So he's just constantly on the run. And it seemed like at one point there was a sultana who he was into and he liked, and he would kill people with his Punjab lasso to entertain her. But maybe I was misunderstanding that. But it seemed like that was a part in the book where it talked about that. So he was interested in some sultana, and she was just a mean person and enjoyed seeing him torture people, that sounded like. But anyway, eventually he goes to Paris, and because, again, he's a very skilled architect, I believe his dad was also an architect, which explains why he's so good at it. Anyway, so he starts helping with the Paris Opera House. And so because he helps construct it, he therefore puts in some of these passageways and these tunnels and these trapdoors, and he decides that he's just going to live there from now on. And I guess throughout all these travels and when he's helping build the Paris Opera House, he must have been wearing some kind of disguise, right? Because in the book, he is just like a very hideous person, and it talks about how like he doesn't even have a nose, and just, yeah, so he must have had some sort of disguise on when he was doing all this. And we do hear a part in the musical where the Phantom is singing, and he talks about how his first mask was a scrap of clothing given to him by his mother, so that part is the same. So in the movie, we have the scene where Madame Giry is telling Raoul about how when she was young, there was a circus in town and she saw them, and the Phantom, who was then a boy, was like part of this circus act, and he was being abused, and he ends up killing the guy in charge of the act. And then Madame Giry, she sees this, and so she takes him and she helps him hide in the opera house where she is there training to be a dancer. So his background is a bit different from book to movie there. And to talk about the Phantom and Christine, so in the book, Eric just seems to be beyond any type of positive influence. He does release Christine in the end in the book, but he just is just so beyond help, it seems, that he's just not mentally there, and he doesn't think logically and normally. And we really just see in the book just how much he tormented Christine and tricked her and manipulated her and forced her to do things. And there's even a point in the end at the last time he brings her down to his lair, he leaves her alone and she tries to commit suicide by like bumping her head repeatedly against the wall. And so when Eric comes back and he sees this, he ties her to the bed. That way she won't try to harm herself again. And she also can't show any affection towards Raoul or any man because the Phantom will be so jealous. And the movie kind of shows that where at the masquerade, she tells Raoul that they have to hide their engagement because she doesn't want the Phantom getting upset. But it was definitely more so in the book, where she was very paranoid about the Phantom seeing her with other men, specifically Raoul. And we learned that when Christine was a child, she was visited by this voice, and then she later told Madame Giry about this. Madame Giry was her adoptive mother, and she tells Madame Giry she wonders if it's the angel of music who her dad had told her would come visit her. So there was this like superstition type thing about her dad. He had this idea of certain people were visited by an angel of music, and that meant that they were going to be talented musically. And he said how, you know, not everybody is visited by them, and some of them are visited later in life. But, you know, the really lucky ones at some point are visited by the angel of music. And so she tells Madame Giry about this, and Madame Giry is like, well, next time you hear the voice, why don't you ask him if it's the angel of music? And so she hears the voice again, and she asks if it's the angel of music, and he's like, yeah, sure, that's who I am. So she really just like opened up the opportunity for the Phantom to pretend he is this angel of music. And at one point in the book, Christine is telling Raoul about all of this, and he thinks to himself, he now realized the possible state of mind of a girl brought up between a superstitious fiddler and a visionary old lady, and he shuddered when he thought of the consequences of it all. And so we have the part where Christine is reunited with Raoul, and then from there she's taken down below to the Phantom's lair. She's there for a couple of weeks, and then he lets her go, and she comes back. And when she comes back, she's wearing this ring on her engagement hand. Raoul will ask her about it, but she doesn't want to talk about it. And it is a ring, of course, given to her by Eric, and Eric tells her that she has to always wear it, and it's a sign of her loyalty to him. But Christine does tell Raoul, because Raoul is obviously interested in her, and so she's like, you know what, why don't we just pretend that we're engaged for the next 2 weeks, and we can just live in this pretend world. And she tells him that the Phantom is working on his own play, Don Juan Triumphant, and she's like, when he's working on that, he just gets like tunnel vision and is obsessed, and he's not going to bother us because he's too busy working on that. However, they still do try to spend time higher up in the opera house. You know, Christine hopes that if she's not spending too much time lower, that the Phantom, you know, won't see her with Raoul. Which the Phantom tells her she can spend time with Raoul, but only inside the opera house. But even so, she wants to avoid him seeing with her. Anyway, they go up to the roof at one point, and she tells him all about the Phantom, thinking that they are safe. But of course, the same in book and both movies, the Phantom is there, and he is hiding, and he is overhearing everything she is telling Raoul. So yeah, in the book, the Phantom is just very, you know, manipulative and just horrible. And in the 2004 movie, the musical, like, we see how he's controlling over her, but it's just not quite to the same extent. But the movie does have this line, which I didn't really think anything of it initially, but the Phantom has the line where he's talking about Raoul, and he says he was bound to love you when he heard you sing, talking about Christine and Raoul. And that part, like, that comes off as like manipulative, right? Because he's like, you know, Raoul only loves you because you're a great singer. I loved you even before you sang, so my love is more true than Raoul's, and he wouldn't even love you if it wasn't for the fact that you could sing. Acting as if he's the only one who could ever possibly truly love Christine, when that's not true at all. But yeah, overall, he just doesn't come across quite as messed up in the 2004 movie. Like, clearly he has issues, but it's just not to the extent that is shown in the book. And also, in the book and movie, there's a part where Christine is down in his lair and she takes his mask off and he freaks out. And in the movie, like, he yells at her and is upset. But in the book, he yells at her, is upset, and he like grabs her face and forces her to look at him. And then he takes her hand and he like uses her nails to scratch his face. So he just goes to a whole nother level in the book in that scene. And then to talk about Raoul and Christine. So in the book, Raoul is also like very possessive and very jealous over Christine. And also he's just very self-centered. Like, he just doesn't seem very concerned about her and what she's going through. And at one point he overhears her say, "Poor Eric." And the book reads, "At first he thought he must be mistaken. To begin with, he was persuaded that if anyone was to be pitied, it was he, Raoul. It would have been quite natural if she had said, 'Poor Raoul,' after what had happened between them. But shaking her head, she repeated, 'Poor Eric.'" And just early on, especially in this book, Christine, just the way she acts, it seems so obvious that She's being manipulated and in just this weird abusive relationship with Eric. But Raoul is just so blinded to it because he's so focused on himself. And he's just so jealous and he makes everything about him. And at one point he's like saying mean stuff to her and she says, "You will beg my pardon one day for all those ugly words, Raoul, and when you do, I shall forgive you." He shook his head. No, you have driven me mad when I think I had only one object in life, to give my name to an opera wench. So yeah, he's just very rude and mean. And also Raoul is in the book, he is pretty useless in the rescue of Christine. Like it is thanks to the Persian that she is saved because Raoul just falls apart and is not very helpful at all. And in the musical, I mean, when Raoul and Christine first reunite, she talks about the angel of music and he's just kind of like laughing, being like, you know, like, okay, I'll see you at 11. And then he leaves and then he overhears the Phantom talking to her, which is the same in the book as well. But then as time goes on, he realizes the seriousness and that this is for real. And there is also a scene where in both book and movie that Christine does go to a cemetery and then the Phantom is there singing to her and Raoul follows her. And in the movie, this leads to a duel between Raoul and the Phantom, but I don't remember a duel taking place in the book. And in the movie, Raoul also comes up with a plan to catch the Phantom during, Don Juan Triumphant. And so just in general, in the 2004 movie, Raoul is much more heroic. He's dueling the Phantom, he's coming up with these plans to save Christine, and he's just much more likable, less self-centered, and just more the hero of the story. Also in the movie, they say how Christine and Raoul had been childhood sweethearts, where in the book they had known each other and he had known her dad, but I don't remember that they were like childhood sweethearts necessarily, they were just friends. But also I've talked about when they reunite in her dressing room, which after they reunite, he leaves and then he overhears the Phantom take her. But one change is that when they reunite in the book, she has just fainted, and so they bring her back to the dressing room and she's coming to, and there's all these people around, and he chooses that moment to be like, "Hey, do you remember me? I caught your scarf when we were kids," or like, some story. And instead, she just like kind of laughs at him and doesn't acknowledge that she knows him. And so he is very hurt by this and embarrassed. And he asks her about this later. And she says that she, couldn't acknowledge that she knew him because she knew the Phantom was overhearing and she didn't want to make him jealous. Whereas in the movie, it's different. Like they reunite and it's just the two of them and it goes well. And in the movie, so we have the masquerade scene, and in the masquerade song, we learn that the Phantom has left them alone for the last 6 months and everything has gone great. And during that time, Raoul and Christine also got engaged, but like I said, she tells him like that they should keep it a secret. And he's like, why? Whereas in the book, during the masquerade, Christine, at this point, she tells Raoul, like, we can't be seen together. The Phantom is, like, crazy jealous at this point. But she writes him a note telling him, like, this is how I'll be dressed. You dress this way, and we can secretly have a conversation during the masquerade. And so that's how they are able to have a conversation during this party. The book also, like, the Phantom is there and he's dressed as the Red Death, but he is just kind of there. He doesn't do anything. Whereas, of course, in the 2004 movie, he's dressed as the Red Death, but this is also when he makes his announcement that he wants them to perform his play Don Juan Triumphant. And so this announcement of him wanting to perform that is not in the book, and they never performed Don Juan Triumphant. During the masquerade as well, in the movie, Raoul like goes into a trapdoor and he's in this like room with a bunch of mirrors, and then Madame Giry like saves him from this room, and that's when he hears the backstory of the Phantom. And again, that wasn't in the book. And so to talk about the movie ending, so they are performing Don Juan Triumphant, and then the Phantom appears and they're singing. And then during the play, she takes his mask off. Everybody freaks out. It's this big deal. And then he like causes them to fall through the floor into his lair. Soon after this, Madame Giry gets Raoul and she takes him part of the way down, telling him where to go. And there's like some traps and stuff that Raoul goes through, but ultimately he ends up in the Phantom's lair with the Phantom and Christine. The Phantom tells Christine that she needs to agree to marry him, otherwise he's gonna kill Raoul. And Christine is just like so disgusted and horrified that he is just such a terrible person. And she says the line where, it's not his face that bothers her and that it's in his soul where the true distortion lies. And then she proceeds to kiss him. And the Phantom is like so touched by this kiss that he has a moment of sanity and he tells her and Raoul to just get out of there and leave, which they do. However, Christine does come back one last time and she gives him the ring he had taken from her in the movie, then she leaves. We then flash forward to the present day and we see Raoul, who is an old man, and he goes to Christine's fresh grave, so she recently died. And there on the grave is also a rose with a black ribbon, and I think the ring as well. And so that shows that the Phantom is still alive, and he loved Christine throughout all this time. And with the book ending, so pretty different. For starters, Madame Giry isn't like the Phantom's person the way she is in the movie. She will keep his box open for him, and she will deliver money to him through this box. But yeah, they don't have any other bond beyond that. And the only reason she helps him with keeping box 5 open is because the Phantom has like promised her that if she does what he wants, he will help her daughter Meg, eventually become the main dancer or something. So in the book, instead of Madame Giry helping him find the Phantom's lair, it is instead this guy who is simply called the Persian. And so he knows he knows the Phantom from the Phantom's days working as a sultan. And the Persian actually saved Eric's life because, like I said, the sultans wanted him killed, and the Persian helps him escape one of those sultans. And then they just happen to meet up again at the Paris Opera House. And so the Persian helps Raoul get down into the lair. And again, there's like a series of traps, and there's like this fiery head that comes after them, and then rats. And then they end up in this torture chamber, which kind of like the movie, that room full of mirrors, because this torture chamber is full of mirrors, but in the middle is a tree with a branch, and hanging from the branch is a noose. And the mirrors make it seem like they're in a forest. Also, by the way, in the book, before all of this, the day before, Raoul is telling Christine, after she tells him all about Eric when they're up on the roof, in that moment, Eric is like, let's run away right now. And she's like, no, I have to let Eric hear me sing one last time. So after tonight, I'll sing and then we can run away together. And so, of course, during the performance, the Phantom has the lights go out. And when the lights turn on again, Christine is gone. So it's not the same. Like, the Phantom isn't part of the performance the way he was in the musical. But anyway, that's just kind of dumb on Christine's part. Like, I get she's not in her right state of mind because she's in this like weird manipulative relationship. But like, why does he need to hear you sing one last time? Just get out of there. So the Persian and Raoul are in this torture chamber, and they can hear through the walls that Christine is like right there in the other room, but she can't find out how to get the door to this place, and they can't find the latch that will open it. And at some point, the Phantom comes back, and then he knows that they're in the torture chamber, and so another way he tortures people. The chamber itself, like with all the mirrors, kind of makes you go crazy, I guess. But then when he sees that they're in there, he turns the heat up really high. And so they just become super hot. And like right away, Raoul just loses it. And he like can't stand the heat, and he can't stand the mirrors. And he's just going crazy right away, basically. And at one point, the Persian does come across like this screw latch thing that causes the chamber to open up, and they fall down below where there are a bunch of powder kegs. And we also discover that it is now 11 p.m. the next night. So in the book, they were in this torture chamber for almost 24 hours. So you can't really blame Raoul for going crazy, but it does seem to happen so quick, whereas the Persian is better at like keeping a steady head. Anyway, so they're down below with all this gunpowder, and they hear the Phantom and Christine, and she has to make a choice to either, there's these two knobs or, switches, and one looks like a scorpion, and he's like, if you turn the scorpion, that means you agree to marry me. If you turn the grasshopper, that means you won't marry me, and we're all gonna die, basically. So, and then Raoul and the Persian are in this gunpowder room, so they're like, if you turn the grasshopper, that means this gunpowder is going to get lit up and the whole place is going to go to flames. And so the Phantom leaves her alone, and he knows that they're down there in the gunpowder room, so he leaves them alone to decide. And they decide to have Christine turn the scorpion, which means, yes, she will marry him. And when she turns the scorpion, that room with the powder keg, gunpowder, it starts to fill with water, which is good because it means the place won't blow up. But then the water just won't stop. And so Raoul and the Persian are like almost drowning. And eventually they black out. And when the Persian comes to, the Phantom tells him like, it's thanks to Christine. She convinced me to save both of you. The Persian doesn't know where Raoul is though. And he's like, well, where's Raoul? The Phantom won't say. And instead the Phantom just has the Persian taken back to his home. And so the Persian like writes up his account, and he's going to go tell the police about Eric or whatever when the Phantom shows up to his house. And Eric tells him, I had Raoul and Christine, and I was, going to take Christine away with me. But then she let me kiss her. And, it was my first time where a living person allowed me to kiss them. And he kind of says it in a way that insinuates he has kissed dead bodies before, but not a living body. Anyway, so he's so touched that she kissed his forehead, and she allows him to kiss her forehead, and these forehead kisses just melt his heart, and he allows her to run away with Raoul. And he tells the Persian that now, because he can't have Christine, he is going to die of a broken heart. And he tells the Persian that when he does die, he wants a notice put in the paper of his death, and he wants the ring he had given Christine to be put on his finger when he is buried. And that is how it ends. That's what happens. The Phantom dies. And so on to the 1925 movie, just a quick movie review. So it's been a long time since I've seen a silent movie, and I just really love how they demand your attention, right? Because there's no sound aside from the music. So you have to be watching it in order to read the dialogue. And so I really like that. And I've seen a number of silent movies in the past, but most of them were comedies, specifically Charlie Chaplin and Harold Lloyd. I watched a lot of them growing up, and I've seen some in adulthood as well, and I really enjoy those ones. But I haven't really seen any dramas, and definitely none of like the horror movies from the time. And this one, I was surprised at how truly creepy it was. Lon Chaney famously did his own makeup. He plays the Phantom, and he did an amazing job. It looks so scary. And the mask he wears when he's, undercover, the mask is really creepy because they try to make the mask look human-like, and because it looks human-like, it just makes it even creepier. And I also read that Lon Chaney was raised by deaf mutes, and so he just naturally was a great silent movie star because he grew up having to be very expressive and use his hands to talk. And this movie adaptation does stay pretty true to the book. It speeds things up because it's like less than 90 minutes long, but for the most part, it is pretty accurate to the book. One change, though, is the end. So beginning with the end, we have Raoul and his guy helping him. Like I said, in the book, it's the Persian. And this silent movie, it's a guy who is like an undercover cop who has been investigating Eric. And so he finds Raoul, and he's the one that helps him go down below. Same thing happens where they end up in the torture chamber. From there, they're in the gunpowder room. From there, Christine has to choose between the scorpion and the grasshopper, and then the room fills up with water. So all of that is the same. And then, Eric saving them out of, the water. And then from there, after he saves them from being drowned, he takes Christine in a carriage and runs away with her. The townspeople also, like the opera people and the townspeople, have like rallied together to catch the Phantom. And so as he's running off in this carriage, the townspeople are coming after him. And at some point, Christine is able to get out of the carriage, and then Raoul saves her. And then the townspeople like overtake the Phantom, and then they end up beating him to death, and then they toss his body into the river, and that is the end. So I was pretty surprised, like a very different ending from the book right there. In the book, Eric dies of a broken heart, whereas in the movie, he is bludgeoned to death by the townspeople before being tossed in the river. And literally, as soon as he's thrown in the river, the end. And that's it. So yeah, I was pretty surprised by that. And I did want to talk about Carlotta because the famous scene in the musical and in the book where Carlotta is singing when the Phantom wanted it to be Christine. And so he has Carlotta croak when she's supposed to sing. And this is not in the movie though, not in the silent movie, which makes sense because it's a silent movie. And so that's just not part of it. But that's such a great scene in the book and especially in the musical, I think. But anyway, another weird thing about Carlotta in the 25 movie is that her mom is a character. And so I don't understand the scenes with her mom. Like, why not have Carlotta in those scenes standing up for herself? Why do we have the mom standing up for Carlotta? I didn't understand that. But I also wanted to talk about Joseph Buquet, who is in all three. And in the book actually begins with them finding Joseph Buquet's body. He has been hung, but the rope is missing. Whereas in the 25 movie, his body is found very close to the end. And then in the musical, it's right in the middle of the movie. So he dies in all three, but in all three, his death is in different places. And I did want to mention in the 25 movie, the first time, like in the 25 movie and in the 2004 musical, Joseph Buquet likes telling stories of the Phantom and creeping people out. And in the 25 movie, as he's telling people these creepy stories of the Phantom, he's holding this prop head that looks very real. So it's just a very creepy vibe to the whole scene as he's holding this head, this realistic looking head. And with Raoul, so in the silent movie, like, he's kind of in the middle, like he's not the self-centered wimp he was in the book, but he's also not the hero of the 2004 movie. And honestly, his character is just kind of bland, I thought, which, I mean, Christine is good in the silent movie, but honestly, none of these characters have a ton of character development. And I wasn't really feeling the romance between Christine and Raoul, which, to be fair, I wasn't really feeling the romance in any of these versions. I think the 2004 movie, you feel it the most, but even so, I didn't find myself cheering for her and Raoul to get together in any of these. But I also wanted to talk about a scene from the book that I didn't mention where Raoul, I think it's after that scene on the rooftop, Raoul goes home and then he's in bed and he thinks he sees the eyes of the Phantom out on his balcony. And so he shoots. And then when he opens up, there's blood on the balcony. However, his brother, Raoul has a brother in the book and the silent movie, but his brother says that it was just a cat. But Raoul is like, no, like it was the Phantom and he followed me home. And that's not in either movie adaptation. But in the 25 movie and in the book, Raoul, like I said, has a brother. And in the book, he is against Raoul marrying Christine. And so that's kind of some drama we have. And in the 25 movie and in the book, Raoul's brother suspects that Raoul has gone down below into the lair to get Christine, and so he goes down below as well, and he ends up dying. In the movie, the 25 movie, this is kind of a, one of those creepy scenes where the Phantom, he gets this reed, which this is talked about in the book as well, but he gets this reed so he can go underwater and breathe, and he sneaks up on the guy and he turns the boat over so the guy dies. Whereas in the book, it's made to seem like the guy dies like kind of as an accident, like it's just one of the traps the Phantom sets up and the guy ends up dying. But anyway, in both versions, the brother dies. So to talk about book versus movies, this is tough because I love how in the book and in the 25 movie, just the Phantom is just such a messed up person. He's just so disturbed, more so than the musical. Like I said, in the musical, he's clearly messed up, but you just aren't as bothered by him, and he isn't as unsettling as he is in the 25 movie and in the book. And it isn't even just his face, because honestly, in the musical, Gerard Butler, his face isn't that bad. Whereas in Lon Chaney, like, he looks so creepy. And so I know it's messed up to say because he looks creepy, you don't like him, because then it's like judging him by his looks. But yeah, Gerard Butler just looks too normal. And when he has the mask on, he looks totally fine. And so you just aren't as disturbed by him, I guess, because he just doesn't look as terrifying as Lon Chaney does. But yeah, when I watched this movie when I was younger, like a teenager, I was rooting for Christine to get with Gerard Butler because I was like, oh, he loves you so much and he's so lonely and he's just this tortured soul and you should get with him in the end. Whereas now as an adult, even though the Phantom in the musical isn't as messed up, it's still a very unhealthy relationship and he is still a messed up person and it's still an abusive relationship, even if Gerard Butler is handsome. So I think it's good that she does not get with him in the end. And so because I love the music so much, and like I said, I grew up listening to the Broadway soundtrack, and then this movie I just love so much, and the music is just incredible. And so it's really hard to choose because, like, if it wasn't for the music, I guess I wouldn't like the 2004 movie as much, maybe. But the music is like everything. So how can you think of this story without thinking of the music when it comes to the musical? Like, I just love all of them for what they are. Like, the silent movie, it leaves something to be desired, like I said, with the character development, and they kind of speed things up. But Lon Chaney, like, he is as iconic a monster as the Phantom, as Bela Lugosi as Dracula, and Boris Karloff as the monster in Frankenstein. Like, he's so iconic and incredible. But then I love the musical, and the production, and the costumes is amazing, and the singing is wonderful. Yes, Butler isn't, like, fantastic, but he's still pretty good. And then in the book, I really enjoyed the book. It was like a 4-star read for me, but yeah, I loved the book. And I liked how dark it was. And I love all three for what they are, basically. And I'm going to cheat and maybe not pick a favorite because I think you should check out all three of these. All three are worth your time, in my opinion. So it's hard to choose which one I like best because part of me is tempted to say the musical just because I love the music so much. But then I really like how messed up the Phantom is in the 25 movie and in the book. But then the 25 movie just leaves out so many details, like so many details that I wish were there. So the movie really rests on just like Lon Chaney's performance. The woman who plays Christine is good too, which I read that when she takes his mask off and his face is revealed for the first time, she had never seen his makeup. So her like shock and fear is real because she had never seen it before. I don't know. They're all amazing. Watch and read all three of them. So I'm going to cheat and not pick a favorite. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining me here today to talk about The Phantom of the Opera. Let me know down below what you think. And join me next week when I will be talking about Joe, which is a novel by Larry Brown. And then the movie stars Nicolas Cage and Ty Sheridan. And that's a really good one. So I'm excited about that. Thanks for joining me for Phantom of the Opera. This was so fun to talk about. And it was so fun to read the book for the first time and to watch the 1925 silent film as well for the first time. So this was just such a fun episode to work on. And I'm really glad it won in that video where I had you guys choose what I cover. So don't forget to subscribe so you can take part in the book versus movie topics I do and like this video. And yeah, thanks again, and I will see you next time.